All right. So we have we're going from projective measures in psychotherapy to another application of AgileBrain, which I think the group will find interesting. I know they'll find our guest interesting today. I'm super pleased to introduce you to a friend of mine, um, Peter Tony Choido. And Tony, are you there?
I
I
am
see
here.
you.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's awesome. Tony, I've known Tony for a number of years now. I've skied with him. I've had a lot of fun over those years getting to know him and all. But one thing I will never do is run with him. I'm blessed with a bad knee, which gives me an excuse not to lace up my running shoes anymore. And I should credit Lisa King, who's on the call, for introducing us to Tony in the first place. So thank you again, Lisa. Um, we uh, Tony, we didn't know you were such an athlete when we first met you, and I'm not even sure you knew yourself. This is this is a new thing for you, right?
Yes, I call it a new chapter in a string of happy accidents. And I have absolutely had an amazing time these last like several years. And I want to say thank you to you and to Bill and to Lisa, JD, everybody at Agile Brain and Leading Indicator Systems. You guys have always been very supportive of me and always been very fun. I hope you're going to come out again to Utah and ski again in December for your trip, and hopefully we'll be able to get in some turns at your favorite resort, which is also
Yep.
one of mine.
It's
So
already booked.
there you go. That's great. That's
And
great.
Tony, you have the dubious distinction of being the first Agile Brain sponsored athlete. They used to say that and a you know a quarter will get you a cup of coffee. Uh, it's a pretty dubious distinction, at least at this point. But we're delighted to have you in our stable of athletes, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But let's just touch base with you. You've been developing games and other related products, interactive, experiential learning, and the like. 35 years.
Yes, it's been a
Was
long
that all an
time.
accident?
That was a complete accident, and there's actually a funny story that that goes along with that I'd love to share with you if we have a couple minutes.
Sure.
So, in between the summer of high school and college, I was working at a toy store, and I used to work behind the Nintendo counter. And this guy kept coming into the store and he said, "Hey, you seem like you know a lot about games. I'm starting a little Nintendo licensee company. Would you like to come and work for me?" And so I said, "Sure, I think that sounds great." So my first jobs were basically writing instruction manuals and back of the box copy for 8-bit Nintendo games and Game Boy, because that was a brand new thing that had just come out like the Christmas before. And I was getting ready to go to the University of Utah. I was convinced I was going to go to law school. I was set to do history and political science. And within a couple of years, that job turned into an accidental product management job. And I found myself meeting amazing people, going to incredible places, and being able to work on some awesome projects. And by the time I finished undergrad, I thought, this games industry thing is so much fun and I'm getting exposed to so many wonderful things. Why would I want to do anything else? So I ended up taking a year off in between undergrad and grad, ultimately went back and got my MBA, and I really never left games and interactive entertainment. And along the way, some of the most amazing people that I have met have opened doors for opportunities that I never would have imagined. I had a chance to work on launch titles for the original PlayStation. I worked for Microsoft when we were doing the very first Xbox. A close friend at the time at Microsoft introduced me to an individual who used to work for Steve Jobs at Apple. And I was recruited away from Microsoft to go work for an amazing company under this guy in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we were making games, core technology, as well as training tools for the United States Marine Corps, healthcare organizations, lettered agencies in the federal government. And I've just been very fortunate to have had some awesome people teach me a lot of things and open some doors, and I've been able to travel the world. So
That sounds like an amazing journey. Bill, writing, training uh, for software sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Boy, it does. And Tony, we haven't talked about this at all, but it takes me back to a young guy I met early on in this educational training software named John Miller, who you may know from Sega platforms. He did Spider-Man, Tasmanian Devil.
uh,
But he introduced to that whole game world the notion of an authoring system rather than sitting there and cranking assembler code. He actually developed an authoring system, which was a spin-off of some work we had done in an educational field. But
that's
yeah,
really neat.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's great. It's amazing how there are so many things that's associated with games that have bled into all different kinds of sectors all across the planet. And it doesn't matter if you talk to people in ed tech, fintech, med tech, fit tech. There's this concept of gamification and certain processes and things that we do in the games industry that everybody wants to get their hands on.
It's human interaction. And it really is. You can bring it right back to motivation if you push it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, look, before we push too far in that direction, 250 plus games and training products. One of them was Magnify You, and that led us together. And because AgileBrain was one of the, kind of the core components of that platform that Lisa built, and you were helping her build it.
That was an amazingly fun project. That was one of several SaaS platforms that I've been involved with the design and the development of. And it was an amazing experience. Lisa had a wealth of incredible ideas, and I was very proud and happy that we were able to execute on those for her.
Well, we're delighted to have Lisa and Sarah Ravesi from that team with us now because the content that they're helping us develop and the user experiences are going to make AgileBrain that much better and better. So, is that spelled right? I think it might be Kinima. I think
Kinima.
I apologize. I think Kamina.
Yeah,
Kinima.
it's Kinima. That's okay.
Kinima. I apologize.
K-I-N-I-M-A.
I reversed the M and the N. Tell us, and I think maybe I mean, we're doing some work with Kinima. Thanks to your introduction there. Tell us a little bit about them because they're a pretty interesting organization.
So it is an amazing application. It is a platform that is focused on biomechanics. It is a study of movement. It is an extremely accessible, very fun to use platform where through a series of, let's say, 30-second assessments, we take a look at how your individual body moves. Over time, as we track enough data, we understand a profile and we can pinpoint things about you that I think will blow your mind. I've seen situations where we have basically told people, hey, we think that you have something going on with your knee, or we think you have something going on with your shoulder. This is what this means. And people have been blown away because they've never disclosed those kinds of things. The goal is that we want to give you insight into self as either an athlete or as a trainer slash coach. And keep in mind that there are athletes who are also trainers and coaches. By understanding how you move, it will help you understand what you need to do to continue to do the amazing activities that you enjoy as you age. As of right now, it's not a sports or an activity specific application. So I can't say, hey, it's a strength training app or it's a running application. but it helps you understand how you move and how you can move more effectively. We're very fortunate in terms of having some incredible traction with some awesome partners. And I think that there is a natural marriage between what we're doing at Kinima with understanding the physical side of you as an athlete or a trainer coach, and with our relationship with AgileBrain, what that means on the mental side. Because we all know, we've all heard stories, we've maybe even experienced this ourselves, that you could be at the peak of your physical performance, but if mentally you're off, if something is bothering you, if there's a sense of emotional well-being or motivation that isn't quite up to snuff, that may very easily crater all the strengths you have. And so you need to look at the two of them as more of a holistic unit. And so I've been really excited to see how the relationship between Kinima and AgileBrain has evolved and is going to continue to evolve over time as we work together.
That's awesome. So Kinima is the how you move, and AgileBrain is the why you move.
Right. There,
Well, we'll dig into that in a minute, but you've got a family life too. I think you just sent one off to college. Is that right?
I did, and I will tell you, I'm still kind of getting a feel for that. It is bizarre that we are really on the cusp of the empty nest. Our youngest just graduated from high school and she went away to school. She's only about 40 minutes away, but she doesn't live here anymore, so that's kind of weird. Our oldest is in his fourth year at the University of Utah, and he does live here, but he's also working full-time at a hospital. And so he is either always with his girlfriend, or he is always at school, or he is always at work. So he might as well like not live here. So it's kind of me, Gina, and then our little border collie cocker spaniel mix, Charlie.
Well, that gives you more time to run then, I guess.
It does. It does.
Um, and run you have in short order. You've run six world majors. Just tell us quickly what inspired you to do this?
So that is the epitome of the happy accident. If the job career choice to pursue games was one, this one is actually even bigger. So as you know, John, I really love to ski. And so when we moved back from Minnesota to Utah, I really wanted to teach the kids how to ski. And we did that for many, many, many years. And all of a sudden, one day, all the ski resorts closed down. And it was because of COVID. And I sat at my desk in my little dusty Star Wars laden office here. And I said, you know what? I need to have some new physical activity or I'm going to go out of my mind. And I remembered that in high school for a couple years, I ran track and cross country. I've always been a competitive swimmer. So the running thing is completely separate and a totally new thing. So I thought, you know what? I'll go out and I'll run again. And so for a couple of times a week, I would go run a couple of miles, and I did this for months. And one day I was actually making fun of myself on social media based on kind of a running joke between my son and one of his friends. And a longtime fraternity brother who I had not seen in 30 years, he sent me a note and he said, "What are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "Nothing." And he goes, "Meet me at 5:30 in the morning at the base of this canyon," which is about like 10 minutes up from the house. And so I met him. Like I said, I hadn't seen him for like 30 something years. And he goes, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to run 8 miles down the canyon." And I was like, okay. So we run down the canyon and we get to the base and he goes, "How'd you like that?" And I said, "I actually loved it." And he goes, "Great. I thought you did really well. Here's the thing. I don't have a running buddy. So I either have to hitchhike back up to my truck or I've got to run back up the canyon, both of which really, really, really suck. Will you be my running buddy?" And so I said, "Yeah, okay, sure, I'll do that." So we did this for months and months and months. And he long-term talked me into getting into competitive racing. So we started signing up for half marathons, Olympic distance triathlons. And he calls me one day and he says, "We are going to sign up to run a marathon." He goes, "I've done a couple of them. You never have." And he goes, "And we have one goal." And I said, "Okay, what's that goal?" And he said, "The goal is we are going to qualify for Boston." And I thought he was absolutely insane. But I did it because I trusted him. He's been a good friend of mine. So we went through the whole training cycle, and we're a little different in terms of he always is really into kind of the stats, and he tracks things on his watch, and I'm very different in terms of I run 100% off of feel. I don't wear a watch. I listen to music while I run, but I just go off of how I feel, and I ski basically the same way. When we got to the finish line, I was blown away. I qualified for Chicago, New York, and Boston all in a single go. And that's 3 of the 6, there's now 7 world major marathons. And I thought, wow, maybe this is something that I can do. And so for the next like couple of years, we traveled the world doing those 3 marathons. We layered in Berlin, London, and we just did Tokyo together back in February, March. We got the Abbott 6-star, and so now we're kind of going back and rerunning races and having a lot of fun in the process. So
That's awesome. Well, look, let's turn it over. And I did note you were your fun fact. You're a Star Wars super fan, but anybody who can see your background will
yeah,
we'll see some of that already. We have a runner in our midst here. Before Dr. Bill Nolen was maybe even a doctor. I don't know. You
It
were
wasn't
you were
the,
running, Bill.
yeah, it was indeed. And, I stumbled into marathoning and, got involved with the Greater Boston Track Club in its early days with a real cast of characters. Alberto Salazar um, was a kid. He was a high school kid back then. He became pretty famous coach with Nike. But it was a crazy bunch. I used to train with Bobby Hodge, who won Fukuoka in Japan. He was a serious runner, and I got into it, and I could run forever. I don't know that I ever had great speed, but we used to run 175-mile weeks. That was our training.
that's crazy distance.
Yeah. And I could run, but and David Miller, who's another AgileBrain coach, we got talking, and I was saying my goal one year was to qualify for the Olympic trials, which said you had to run a 2:20. And I didn't do it. David did do it, which is he's got a notch up on me there. But I missed by a good margin. I missed by over 3 minutes. But I used to say to Hodgie, you can go back, you're going to take a nap after we run. I've got to go back to a lab. uh, and but I've run all my life.
Yeah.
I started running when I was 8 years old. My dad got me because he was convinced I was going to be the first American to play in the NHL. Um, Dads can overestimate their kids' abilities
Right.
quite often. But I ran just to, started running to get in shape, and then I ran all through high school. I used to go out and run after, I studied. And it was back in the day when running was unusual. The police would stop me and say, "What are you running from?" And I'd say, "I'm not running from anything."
I'm running for me.
Yeah, I'm running. Yeah, I'm running to have fun. And they would, think I was insane. Um, but yeah, it's just and then I did marathoning for a while, and then got into ultras, which are over 50,
Yeah.
and the Vermont 100, which is 100 miles. They monitor you really quickly, but that's yeah, and I did it. I did it right up until and it's not because of health reasons. I'm still on a bike every morning, but I do look forward to getting back on the road. But it's
That's
been
great.
it's a fun thing. But Tony, when we first met with AgileBrain, one of the things I said is, so what, what's it, why the marathoning? And because people marathon for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And a commendable goal for that first one, you had to qualify for Boston. I think most people would say finish,
Yeah. Yeah.
in any time, because there were very few people who have ever finished. 26.2 miles is a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And as one of my neighbors said to me one time famously, when you're running an ultra, you may want to start with a 50, not 100, because after you've run 75 miles and you think to yourself, I still have a marathon to run, that can be somewhat daunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me jump out here and Barry, take me off the pin, but let's talk about how you're using AgileBrain and working with Bill and the conversations you've had and the insights you've gained.
Okay. I love AgileBrain because it helps me understand the motivations and my mental state going into every single race. I always have enjoyed understanding what do I need to do to get better. And I'm going to quote our good friend Lisa King, who always kind of has described this as the what's next. And I think you really need to understand that. I love what running does, kind of like skiing. I'm a huge Superman fan. So those two sports are basically like my fortresses of solitude, where I can think things through, I can push myself, and I can get a sense of what I want to do, what I feel like I absolutely need to do. I've found that the act of actually getting into a race corral as you're getting ready to start is intoxicating. You look around and you see a wide variety of people from all kinds of backgrounds, all walks of life, and everybody is just deep in their thoughts. Somebody's nervous, somebody's excited. You can see that guy's clearly done this before. This person has never done this before. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to how do you listen to your body and how do you make it through to the finish line and how do you set individual goals to carry you across that. I've been really, really lucky in terms of I've been able to do Boston twice. I just got accepted last week to run it again in 26. I'm really excited about that. I'm doing New York for the first time for the fourth time in November, and I've got Chicago for my third time next month. And I'm working now on trying to figure out how can I improve my times, what individual goals and things do I have on individual races. The ability to use AgileBrain going into a race really was a big deal for me this year, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So Boston is always a little dicey in terms of being able to be accepted because it's not as simple as, oh, I have to run this time and therefore I qualify and get in. You have to run several minutes sometimes below that targeted number just because it is such a small race in terms of the field. It's so competitive that you have to build up this buffer. And so you're chasing a little bit of a moving target. So I had a time for my age group that I was trying to get below and then a certain degree like below that. And I was really lucky because when I ran Tokyo earlier this year for my 6-star, I got a Boston qualifying time for next year's race, and I felt really good about that. And then I ran Boston about a month and a half later, and I got another qualifying time. It wasn't as good as my Tokyo time, but I had another one. So I was feeling pretty comfortable with things. And then we got to the summer. And summer was interesting because since running has become an activity that seems like everybody on the planet has discovered they want to suddenly do, Chicago dropped their qualifying times and Boston made changes to their qualifying times and some other things that are now being applied based on the kind of races that you run. And suddenly my plans for what I was going to be racing in 26 kind of evaporated like overnight. And so I needed to pick up a race just to see if I could at least give myself a little bit more of a safety buffer, just given the competitive nature of how the racing field is evolving. And so I jumped in and I ran a Utah-based marathon about like 3 weeks ago. It's funny, I've lived here almost my whole life and I've run a ton of races everywhere, but I had never run a full marathon in Utah. So that was kind of a first. It was an interesting marathon for me to do because the first part of it has an enormous amount of uphill sections, sometimes going up to 6.6%. There were out and back dirt trail roads. And then the second half of the race was downhill, completely different. So every aspect, every muscle in your legs and your feet is getting tested in a different way. It wasn't the most ideal race for me to try to see if I could get like another BQ, but fortunately I did that. So I set an enormous amount of pressure on myself going into that race because I had a goal that I wanted to beat the time that I had gotten in Tokyo, because I absolutely wanted to make sure that there was no way I wasn't going to get accepted to run Boston and do Chicago again in 2026. And so I was kind of consumed by that. It's not necessarily the most healthy thing to be consumed by, but I knew that I was pushing myself and I really wanted to do that. And thankfully things worked out. I ran an amazing race. It was my second fastest marathon ever, which to me was a huge boon, especially given the topographical changes compared to some of the straight flat races that I've been running the last several years.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Tony, because I do remember with our first, when we looked at the first AgileBrain, if you recall the pre-race, we talked a lot about what was going on with the unmet needs for safety, which had
Yeah.
ignited. And you were funny because you de-emphasized that, you know, it's the start, but you in great detail described how you'd been injured.
Yes. So
And
last year I was running really well. I was really excited. I had just run London. I'd gotten a BQ in London. It was great. And then I signed on to run a Ragnar with a group of friends. And I actually ripped two muscles in my left quad. And pretty much like overnight, I went from feeling like I was doing amazing and I was Superman all of a sudden to I could not walk on my Peloton tread without like holding on for dear life onto the side rails. And I thought, oh, this is no big deal. This is totally going to go away. And well, a month went by, and guess what? It didn't go away. So I went to a physical therapist friend of mine, and he told me what had happened, and I thought like, oh my God, I'm done. So I was completely out for the whole summer. And to be honest with you, hindsight being 2020, Bill, I think it was probably the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me, because it kept me human. It made me, I think, a little bit more humble and appreciate the process. And I think I was taking myself too seriously. There's nothing
yeah,
like being able to strap on your shoes and just go run, and suddenly that's taken from you. Now I found myself, I was in this Alter G treadmill where I'm kind of zipped into this plastic skirt, running on an air bladder that's displacing body weight. So you feel like you're running on the moon. And I would run for like, say, 30 minutes at a time, but at like 30% of my body weight, just so my body wouldn't lose the sense of what it felt like to run. And eventually I was cleared to run again. And the end of my race calendar last year ended up working out. But there was a huge mental state with that, because I was watching all my friends run all these races. I had to bow out of all these races. I couldn't do anything. So I had major FOMO going on.
yeah. Yeah, it was, you know, it was funny because then we, you know, if you recall, we took off from that and talked about potential training variations. I mean, you were running at one point, and it's funny you referenced the Utah race now. You know, pretty much, for example, all your speed work on a Peloton.
Yes. Yeah. I do all my training on my Peloton during the week, Monday through Thursday. Friday is my run day off. And then I do my big outdoor runs on Saturday
Yeah.
and Sunday.
Yeah, the outdoor is a critical part of it. You know, I mean, you know, we don't run marathons on Pelotons. We, you know,
Right.
you hit the road, and
Yeah.
they're different. So you in the last series of Agile Brains that you did, I was looking at your pre-race, which seemed reasonably settled, for
Yeah.
example, and then something happened post-race. You know, I see a lot of activity, or you know, right across foundational level. What happened you know, in that race? Was that the Utah race?
So the most recent one would have been about like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I think so I have certain goals that I want to be able to achieve. And I achieved some of them with this race, but I have a time threshold that I want to break, and I'm inching closer and closer and closer to it. I can taste it, I can sense it, but I'm not quite there yet. So I build up a little bit of anxiety in my head just because I want to be able to do that now, because then I want to do my what's next after that. So there's a speed there that I need to increase.
And is that, do you think, where for example, the promotion dominant success activation is coming from, that you're disappointed with the result?
I think so, because it's like I hit my goal, but yet
Yeah.
there's other goals that I wanted to get that I didn't get all of them. And so
And what, you've got a real link there too with safety and autonomy, which are both looking, again, dominantly prevention. What do you think's going on there?
I was so surprised that I ripped those muscles in my leg last year, and I know how I did it. It was 100% my fault. I am I feel to some extent like I'm kind of holding myself back in some areas because I don't want to run the risk of having an
Yeah,
injury again and then cratering
yeah,
everything.
yep,
Again, it's kind of like, when you're a little kid, you feel like you're immortal, and then something happens and you're like, oh, I'm not from Krypton.
yeah,
I'm not bulletproof.
yeah.
I kind of experienced that at the ripe old age of 52, and I'm not looking to repeat that again.
Yeah. And I would think of that happening pre-race more than post-race, though.
I could see that in terms of I have had that kind of lingering worry about doing something in the middle of a race and not being able to
Huh,
finish. And
huh.
then I'm always relieved when the race is over. And then you think back on that race, you think I could have
Yeah.
done this or I could have done that.
What we've been looking at with AgileBrain is taking it, and I actually have taken the framework and mapped it very directly to training performance, race performance, training, and recovery
Mhm.
activities. And what we're talking about doing is mapping that into one of the AI bots and making that available to people, because there are these things that pop up. I mean, this is all about not what's wrong with you by any means with AgileBrain. It's what can you do better.
Correct.
Um,
And I think that's fascinating, because if that is layered into the concept of say a program, and you can look at this and you can say, physically I want to do X, Y, and Z, and then mentally I need to do A, B, and C, and those two complement each
yeah,
other, then I think you get that better
yeah,
holistic view
yeah.
of you,
Or,
right?
or just being aware. Yeah,
Correct.
and you can get down to the neuroscience of it, of your ventral medial prefrontal cortex and your dorsolateral cortex having their typical battle of rivals, to do the right thing, and yet the emotion coming in. But yeah, it's all constraining how we move,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, look, I want to be mindful of time. Thank you for that interaction, and don't go anywhere. But I do know we've our friends in Ukraine have actually used AgileBrain with some of the Olympic teams, the national teams in Ukraine. Oleg, I know you've been
Wow.
involved in that. Um, so I'd love to invite any comments or questions from anybody in the audience who's a runner or who knows one or has some experience of the mental part of performance. Oleg, do you want to share a little bit about?
Just I can share that we found
So,
that
John,
this
I'm actually going to have to jump. I've got a medical appointment that I've got to jump to.
Understood, Bill. Really appreciate your time.
Tony, great to talk.
See you
Any
too.
anyone's got any more questions on this? You know where we can find us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oleg, share a little bit about that experience.
yeah, it was amazing experience, and we found out that all athletes have some high activation of safety because they scare of trauma before competition. and it was the main problem for them. They were nervous, but after that, after competition, it was settled a little bit. But the common trend, the most activation zone, it's safety, and sometimes it's ethics, because trainer cry to them. They trying to force them to achieve some high results, and sometimes it was on the edge of ethics. And because it's national team, they should win, and they nervous about it very often, and it was a huge impact to them. When trainers know become aware about it, they try to think how to change their behavior to stabilize their athletes and let them be calm before competition, to focus on the results. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can completely relate to that. So, I mean, obviously, the athletes you're referring to are far superior to anything that I have done. But from my personal state, I worry about getting too deeply into my head. It's one of the reasons why I don't wear a watch and track my stats while I run, because the way that I'm wired, I know I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to get some crazy expectations set for myself that I'm never going to meet, and then I'm going to mentally crater myself because I'm not hitting that. Or I'm going to be doing better than expected, and then I'm going to get cocky, and then I'm going to basically run myself out. So I found it's easier for me just to run off a field, listen to what my body is telling me while I'm running, while I'm skiing, while I'm swimming, and just be very in tune and reactive to that as I move towards the finish line. I think it's healthier for me personally.
Yeah. I see Barry Downing was asking Oleg if we had any of the AgileBrain results that you could share with those athletes. I'm not sure whether you're at liberty to share that information, but we have done work with teams. I know, Lisa, you've worked with the soccer team at one of the SUNY schools. And we're looking to do work with a cross-country team this fall. So it's not just individual athletes, but teams as well. The goal would be to be able to share some case studies and examples over time. I'm not sure we're at liberty to share what we already have, though. So Barry, we can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I will ask Irina, our partner, who have been working this our national teams. They signed NDA with Ministry of Sport, and we need to clarify if we can share all results to publish it.
Great. Well, look, if anybody else has any comments, questions, or observations, please drop it in chat and all. I wanted to spend the last couple of minutes just providing some context for why we're so excited to be working with Tony, and that is AgileBrain for Peak Performance, which is a application of AgileBrain in the product concept stage. That would include AgileBrain exercises with performance-related prompts. When I think about it, in Tony's case, I think Tony, you're using my next race or my last race
Correct.
as your focusing prompt. But you could easily imagine, a number of sports or movement-related prompts. When I think about my recovery, when I think about my injury, when I think about my my personal best, whatever that focusing prompt is. We've made a tremendous amount of progress on the AI front. And as Bill mentioned, he's mapped all of the AgileBrain concepts to preparation, so training, performance, and recovery stages of the kind of performance cycle. So we'll be embedding that in AgileBrain AI with a distinct set of content and a persona. to support. Think of that as your AI performance coach. And we're going to look for integrations to other like-minded organizations, Strava for your race results, and Kinima for movement would be two great examples of that. All of that is kind of the concept, and ultimately you'd be able to share your results with your friend, with your coach, with your trainer, but all designed to help you get in touch with the why of your running or your athletic performance. What is the motivator or the demotivator that's holding you back? And so that's the product concept. And we're going to run a trial. Um, and so we're looking for competitive athletes. And by competitive athlete, we're not talking about people who've, are running for, a spot on the Olympic team. We're talking about people who are tracking, their times, that compete regularly, that really have made this a focus of their life, at least in part. They may have a day job, but this is an important part of their life, and so hopefully we'll be able to attract a great group of competitive athletes. We're asking them to do the AgileBrain exercise both pre and post competition. We're asking them to participate in at least 2 debrief sessions with an AgileBrain performance coach. And Dr. Bill Nolen is our first AgileBrain performance coach. Margot Hagland, who isn't on the call today, but is also an AgileBrain performance coach working with us on this. And then for them to complete pre and post trial feedback surveys to gather information and help us determine, is this a viable product? Is this a viable solution? And if so, how do we bring this forward to the community? So that's the product concept. That's the trial concept. And so our ask of anybody here and is, if you are a competitive athlete, we'd love to have you sign up for the trial. If you know a competitive athlete you think might be interested in this, by all means share that with them. And Barry has just dropped the link to a sign up page into the chat. That basically secures a spot in the trial. The trial will not be running probably until early in Q1 2026. So we still have work to do, but this is the first time we're announcing access to the trial or sign up for the trial, and we'll be promoting that. We encourage you to share that around with any athletes you think would be interested in participating, and we'll keep them in the loop. And the incentive for participating is, we all know AgileBrain is fast and fun and free. In this case, it can help the athlete achieve peak performance. You'll get early access to the product if indeed the product comes to life, and a special discount for participating in the trial. So again, would love to have any athletes out there that that you think might fit the bill. Let them know.
John, can I make one quick observation?
Yeah.
I think through the lens of performance, which is Tony and what you're doing in the before and the after the event, let's say it's a marathon or whatever, I think we can take that once we're done with that and move it into performance in the business world, because I think it's the same thing. I think just how you get there and what you do maybe is different. So I see some vision coming that is like huge. Just want to say that. Thank you.
Well, Barry, it's a huge, as we said earlier, AgileBrain has a role anywhere there are emotions. And the flip side of emotion is motivation. So yeah, I think there's a great opportunity. We're pretty busy these days, doing some really interesting and important work in Kiev, in with the SUNY schools in upstate New York, among others. But this is a opportunity that I think will be really fascinating to see how it plays out. And Tony, we're so excited to have you as one of the pioneer trial participants, so to speak. Let's see where it goes.
I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you for having me today. And I will just say this, Barry, to your point. So on some of the ski lift rides that I had with John a couple years ago, I basically asked him, I said, where do you see AgileBrain going? And he has a lot of amazing ideas in terms of all the different ways that it can be applied. So I think your comment is very spot on, and it's fun for me working with AgileBrain in this capacity to see how those things that John mentioned to me on the chairlift are slowly starting to play out.
Well, yeah, thank you, Tony. I think there's some people on the team, including people on this phone call, who pull their hair out when I come up with yet another idea. We're pretty busy. Thankfully, we've got a great team that are really focused on delivering for important groups. High school students in Kiev. Oleg's leading the charge on that really important effort. High school, college students in the New York State school system. Lisa King is leading the charge on that. These are populations who really need the benefits that AgileBrain can deliver. But we couldn't do it without them, and of course, Bill Nolen. But I thought this would be an interesting kind of diversion from our normal path. And Tony, you've been wonderful. So thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thanks, everyone. We'll turn off the recording, and I'll hang out for a few minutes. But really appreciate you joining us again this month.